Welcome into episode 468 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue. And no, Scott's not here, guys. Sorry about that. Scott is on vacation. Bridget, where is Scott again right now?
Oh man, I think he said Maine. Maybe I should pay more attention to what Scott says.
I thought didn't he go to North Conway or something? Wasn't he on
No,
vacation last episode?
he was on Mount Washington this past week, and he took the train. He cheated. He didn't hike it,
That's right. That's
but
right.
yeah, I think he said Maine. I mean, normally the answer is like he's going to a concert, so I'm
No,
gonna
yeah, I
just
think it was Maine. I think it was
take a
Maine.
stab at it being a concert in Maine, but
Yes. I want to say Portland. We'll find out later. I feel like you might
he's gonna be
get
like,
a
guys, I was in Tennessee. But
guys, you guys don't listen very well, do you?
he's like, I was in Spain. But no, so he's gone this week, and then I'm about to leave too. I'm excited. I'm going to the Bahamas in under 10 days now. So that'll be just you two. Because I'm not joining you from. I've tried to join you guys from the Bahamas before, because this is my fourth time going to this particular place in the Bahamas, and the Wi-Fi is never strong enough to do anything. And I tried to
Yeah.
stream a Bruins game there once too, because I went in March once, and I couldn't get it. I was like having a full breakdown. I couldn't get the game, but yeah, I think you guys will do fine. You'll do just fine without me. Even though we're in the part of the year where it's like, what are we going to talk about? And obviously, before we came on here today, we were like, well, we have ideas, but like, there's no breaking news, right? Except for what you want to talk about. But we'll get
Yes.
to it.
Yes, we will get to that. And yeah, I mean, Bridget, we've been in that time of the year for a while now. We're actually the good news is we're approaching third base. We're not rounding third just yet, but
Nah.
couple of more we're about a month away from, or maybe 5 weeks away from the start of training camp, which that's when all the storylines really, I mean, I think training camp is going to be very fascinating this year with all the spots up for grabs
Yeah.
and the overabundance of bottom six forwards that are vying for 4 or 5 spots, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun. But yeah, Bridget, you mentioned it. There's some fashion news to go over. We'll
Yeah.
go over it right now. We'll just do it. We'll get it out of the way. It is the most prominent. It is the most prominent news regarding the Bruins, at least right now. And this, of course, has to do with their away uniforms that were debuted. Now, back on June 25th, I believe it was, the Bruins revealed their new home uniforms. They revealed both of their sweaters, home and away, but only the full home uniform. And that, of course, was in a video with David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy, as well as a photo shoot with those guys. And the reasoning for that timing was because the draft was a couple of days away, and the Bruins wanted to fashion the uniforms in full for their fan base prior to eventually James Hagens and others donning it at the 2025 NHL draft. This time around, Bridget, and I wrote about it right after they released the away uniforms, because what was the date yesterday? August 6th or 7th? Yeah, so it's August 6th. It's like 9:30 in the morning, and they're just randomly dropping these uniforms. I'm like, I wonder why that is. And then it dawned on me, and I actually wrote about it, but I was like, NHL 26 for EA Sports. They were dropping their trailer yesterday at noon, and the thought crossed my mind, oh, I wonder if there's going to be some Bruins players or whatever in that trailer giving away their new away uniforms, and the Bruins want to be the first ones to get it out there. And that's honestly, that is how it played out, because the trailer did drop a few hours later at noon, and there were multiple scenes of Bruins in their white jerseys. So that's probably the mystery as to why it was yesterday. But Bridget, as far as the actual uniforms,
All right,
and
let me pull them up.
I know you're not the biggest uniform buff, Bridget. You like them, but you're not obsessed like myself and Scott.
Yeah.
But what
So,
are your initial takeaways?
so I mean, first of all, this is not even a uniform thing. I think the lighting could have been better for some of the pictures, but maybe that was a stylistic choice. It's kind of hard to see, but this is the full. If people are watching on YouTube, this is like the full getup. I probably should have cropped this in a little bit further, but I mean, they're okay, Bri. Like, I like the
They're
blacks better.
okay. Oh my goodness.
I like the blacks better.
Oh my goodness. That is Listen, we've been doing the podcast for about 4 years, and I wasn't expecting the hottest take to be just now with you saying that these uniforms are okay.
I mean,
I think that across the board, everybody's kind of in agreement that these are absolutely incredible. I mean,
I should let you go first, and then I could have just agreed with
well,
you.
I didn't think you were gonna have such a controversial
I
take.
mean, that's not controversial. I said they're okay.
I know,
I'm
but
not
I
like
think
they suck.
no, but I think that's what I'm trying to say. I think everybody's saying that they're amazing because I mean they are. I mean, basically, they are heavily inspired, just like the home jerseys. They're heavily inspired by the Bruins from the mid '70s to the mid '90s, and with these jerseys in particular, the the Rapid 7 patch obviously is out of the designer's control. That's something that they couldn't control, and it's as subtle as a jersey ad can be. The meth bear on the shoulder obviously is something fans were yearning for prior to the jerseys being revealed back in June. We found out a few months ago that that those weren't going to return, but these jersey patches on the shoulder are as good as they could have for a modern shoulder patch, I believe, outside of the meth bear. It's odd that there's only a shoulder patch on one shoulder, not two. But all in all, the uniforms are to me like a 10 out of 10. I mean, I don't want to I don't want to bore those who might not be massive jersey people on here, but it's to me, I think these are some of the best white uniforms the Bruins have ever used. Now, the big difference between these jerseys outside of the meth bear on the shoulder and uh, the ones that they were inspired by is that the socks here match the jersey piping, whereas when Bork and Neely wore these jerseys, more or less, they had the black stripe with the big yellow stripe in the middle, and then followed by another black stripe, which I love those. But I got to be honest, these socks I think I like better because I do think it's crisp to match the jerseys with the socks. The reason, Bridget, why the home jerseys people are more torn about is because that same concept of matching the jerseys to the socks obviously means that the socks aren't going to be yellow or gold, which is what people love the gold socks with the black jerseys because of the contrast and nostalgia. Now, these black socks are as good as black socks will be for a Bruins jersey. And I think the uniforms are very sharp. They're great. But the away uniforms never had that debate, right? Because they were always all white. Whereas the dark uniforms, some people want gold socks. I think most people wanted gold socks, and some were like, yeah, black's fine. But there's not that much controversy with the whites because they've never had that option. But at the end of the day, I think it's yeah, great uniform set. I think it's some of the best in the league, honestly.
We should have gotten Scott's opinion.
Yeah, I think I know where Scott falls. I think I saw him talking about it online as well. I think he's
Of
more in my
course.
camp. Yeah.
Well, you guys always seem to have the same, like, I don't know if you've ever disagreed in a fashion segment, have you?
Uh, I don't I don't know if he hated the Centennial Golds as much as I did.
No, I don't think so. But I think he said it's because we saw them in person, so like it was a little bit different than in the.
They were even duller in person. Like
You thought though?
at least on TV, like they can
No,
kind
I'm
of
saying in person, like when we were talking to the guys like up close.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean maybe, yeah. I mean the Centennial uniforms I thought were design wise, yeah, there were a couple too many stripes, but I thought the design was nice, but that Centennial glitter gold I hated. I think I had a very strong opinion on
Yes,
that,
you
but
did.
uh I don't know. I just found it weird that you're going to celebrate 100 years of history by wearing a color that the team's never worn before. But I digress. These uniforms are what I wanted for the centennial year, and this is what we've got going forward. So I think they're amazing. I think yeah, like I said, I don't want to bore the non-uniform people at this point.
This
We're
is
about 10 minutes in, but
really,
yeah.
really important question. Is this going to change the trajectory of this team?
Oh fuck yeah! I mean, yeah, these jerseys. I mean, those whites. I think just on style and momentum and confidence, it's got to get them at least another 5 wins, right? But
Okay.
so we'll see.
Yeah,
No,
and
listen, they might lose a lot of games, but they'll look good doing it.
They look good. Before we get into we have like a Three-fer Thursday idea and a Throwback Thursday idea, so we're gonna try to get to both of those things. Before we do though, I want to make sure that we mention that we talked to Will Zellers last episode, and if people want to go back and listen to that, it's, like I said, I think we posted it 2 days ago. It should be right there next to this one. So and if you don't know who Will Zellers is, he's a Bruins prospect that they got in the Charlie Coyle trade. Really promising prospect. So I know we've been spending a lot of time talking about James Hagens and what his future looks like with the Bruins, but Will Zellers is probably a kid that we will also see in a Bruins uniform, maybe at the end of the season, maybe at the end of next season. He's still pretty young, but seems to have a pretty bright future. He's gotten better and better compared to like the competition, and he's pushing for a spot on the U.S. Juniors team this year. So he could be playing with Hagens on that in this late December, early January. But he was an interesting story. I don't know if you had takeaways. I didn't realize he worked on a farm. I thought that was kind of interesting. He's talking about like pheasant hunting. I'm like, I didn't think that this would be part of the interview, but I know people like to hear about how kids grew up and kind of try to glean what they can from him talking about growing up on a farm and being out in the cold, and his whole family going to North Dakota and him being there now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely had some takeaways from that. I think his hockey production kind of speaks for itself. You can look up his numbers online the last couple of years. You can see what he did at Shattuck St. Mary in his final year there, where he, like I said on the episode, I think he had around literally a hair less than 2 points per game. But what was impressive is that every level you get to, the speed at which decisions are made and the speed at which the game is played, it increases, right? Mentally and physically, the game happens faster at the higher levels. So the fact that he was able to go from having that spectacular season at Shattuck and winning a national championship to being the USHL forward and player of the year, having I think it was around 71 points in 50 something games. Um, it just goes to show that he was able to up level mentally and physically, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing him do at North Dakota this coming fall, where there's a major step from USHL to NCAA D1. So similar to how he produced in juniors after producing at a high level in high school prep, I expect him to do the same in the NCAA. Now, I think he's probably going to be at least a 2-year player in college. I think that's probably most likely for him. I mean, you never know,
I
but
think
that's kind of what I'm thinking.
most players are 2-year
Yeah,
players, right? 1 year is really, unless you started college late, kind of a lofty goal, unless you're, like we said, like a Macklin Celebrini
yeah,
or a Will Smith
right.
kind of player, to name some recent ones. But yeah, so he probably still take two seasons out because he's just going to be a freshman this year at North Dakota.
Yeah.
So, but he's going to be an interesting one to follow because North Dakota is going to be really good. So
Yeah, and he turned 19 in April, right? So he'll be approaching 20 at the end of this coming season, this college season, which means he'll be approaching 21 at the conclusion of his sophomore season. And so that fall he would still be 21 years old, and I think at 21 years old, I think we'll be sitting here talking about Will Zellers vying for a spot at Bruins training camp. Maybe he ends up in Providence, maybe he ends up in Boston, but I just think ultimately he's still a couple of years away. So I encourage fans to go back and listen, like you said, and get to know him a little bit because he's a couple of years away. We want just people to get a chance to know him as a person and ask him some fun questions. But obviously follow him at North Dakota and his development and see where things take him over the next couple of years, because he's an exciting prospect, and which gets me to my last takeaway from that interview. But Bridget, I want you to go first.
well, I was gonna say it's an interesting trade tree follow, right? Because this key was acquired in the Charlie Cole trade this year. Donato uh, was sent for Coyle originally, which was a Bruins draft pick. Like, it's just interesting to see what things turn into. So you can kind of link it back, like, oh, when we see what Zellers ends up being eventually, like, we'll think back to like, oh, that I guess it started out as like Ryan Donato and like, and then became Charlie Coyle and then became Will Zellers. Is all connected.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, Bridge. I haven't thought about that. The Charlie Coyle trade on both ends of it, it's probably uncommon where a team trades for a player and then trades him later, and then but both of those transactions were a win for the team, right? Like no one, I don't think anybody has ever looked back at that Charlie Coyle trade where we traded Ryan Donato for Coyle and said the Bruins lost that trade. Charlie Coyle was a third line center anchor on a contending team for 4 years, 4 or 5 years, and then obviously he had to play an accelerated role in 23-24 and did well, but then last year was last year. So acquiring him was a win for the Bruins, no doubt about that. I think it was a 1-for-1. And then trading him, when you traded him, and I think he had, was it a year and a half left on his deal? He was an expiring contract. He was a player in decline, and just the Brewers were able to optimize him as an asset and get Will Zellers for him, get Casey Middlestad, and get a second rounder for him. So I just think that it is an interesting. Charlie Coyle is an interesting asset, right? You won acquiring him, and you won dealing him away.
Well,
I
I
think.
guess TBD on the Middlestat part, though. Like, I mean, these are
Yeah,
some people that we don't really know what their future is in Boston. And we get this whole summer, every time we get mailbag questions, it's like, can we trade Casey Middlestat for X player? And it's just people don't necessarily know what he's going to be in Boston. So, but even if he doesn't end up being here long term or doesn't do well, and Will Zellers eventually does, that's still a win in that trade.
yeah. I mean, you gave up, like I said, you gave up a 32, 33-year-old player who was, in the last three holes, if we're going to use a golf analogy, of his contract with the Bruins, and they were able to get back a second round pick, an NHL player entering his prime, in Casey Middlestad. Again, we'll see how he pans out. But Will Zeller. So to get a younger NHL player, proven player, well, semi-proven player, a promising prospect, and a second rounder for an asset you're going to probably lose for nothing because they weren't going to resign him. It's still a good haul, right? We'll see how good it ends up being, but that kind of gets me to my last takeaway from the Zellers interview, is that we aren't having that interview with Will Zellers if the Bruins didn't do what they were supposed to do at last year's trade deadline. I can't stress enough how much skepticism I had prior to the trade deadline, like the month or two prior. Because if you remember, Bridget, I was telling you and Scott back in like last December, I was saying the power play is brutal. I think the Brewers might miss the playoffs, and because they had all of their underlying team metrics were that they were a bottom third team in the league, yet they were still somehow a playoff team and they had games in hand. And I just said that their special teams, their 5-on-5 production, it is so dismal. Their situational play, it is so bad. It's too much to overcome. They're gonna have their day of reckoning here. I'm telling you guys. And I was nervous that the Bruins weren't gonna sell, because I thought that ownership was gonna look at it and say, "Well, Don, we're only, we're still technically on the playoff bubble, and we don't want to miss the opportunity at playoff gate and playoff games." And then Don, why would he want to sell either, right? Like if I sell, then we definitely won't make the playoffs, and my ass might be in the unemployment line. But of course, he did have that assurance from ownership that he wasn't going to lose his job, and they did sell and do the right thing. So in doing so, you were able to replenish your prospect system a little bit with somebody like Will Zellers. Of course, they ended up going down to 5th in the league, ended up drafting 7th overall. They get Hagens. We know the rest. So
And put Minton in the
yeah,
prospect pool
yeah,
that was added.
and all the
And
draft
who's
capital that
Nadinov? I guess is still pretty young. Maybe put him in
yeah,
it too.
yeah,
Yeah.
all the draft capital that they got. I mean, the Bruins, they have many first and second round picks right now over the next 3 years. I think they still have 9 first and second round picks. So it's just it's a tip of the cap that the Bruins, from ownership to the management, like that they surprisingly did the right thing. I wasn't sold that they were going to, but they did, and that gave us the opportunity to interview a prospect like Will Zellers, 5-6 months later. So
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be resurfacing that interview like as soon as he gets his call up. Like we'll go back and reference that, and see where check back in with him hopefully before he ends up in Boston. But he's focused on playing at North Dakota now. And my thing that stuck with me from the interview, and this is really dumb, but Brian, when you hit him with the rapid fire questions at the end, and you're going like through, first of all, he doesn't like Harry Potter, and I feel like I should have dug in a little further on that. Like, what, why? And this is a very
well,
pro Harry Potter podcast, but
and he said he said
he's a Star Wars guy.
Yeah, and I was like, well, those aren't. It's not one or the other. Like when we were growing up, it was like, are you Harry Potter or are you Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah,
That's kind of
kind
what
of,
it felt like
yeah.
growing up.
But then I should ask him what's his favorite, Star Wars movie,
Yeah.
and I don't know.
Well, we're up against the clock. We only had so much
We
time
were,
left.
we didn't have a whole lot of time, but no, one of the questions you asked him was if he had like a goal song, or like the equivalent to a baseball walk-up song, but like say you were allowed to have a song go off every time you scored a goal, what would it be? I didn't know his, but I was driving up to New Hampshire yesterday, and it for some reason was in my brain for like at least an hour of this car ride trying to figure out what mine would be because I didn't
Mhm.
know. And it started out as I was like, "Oh, I wonder what Scott's would be." Like, I'm interested. And I was like, "Oh, I would pick for him. I would pick That's What Makes You Beautiful by One Direction." And then I realized, no, that's mine. Like, he can't have it. That's the one I want.
That's a good one.
They play
Yeah.
it at every game, in the second intermission. I sing it to Scott every single time. I could be across, like, I could be getting popcorn, and I'll sprint across the ninth floor and, like, almost knock people over to get back in my seat to sing it to Scott before they stop playing it. But
He must love that.
that's gonna be my song. Oh, no, he loves it. No, he hides in the bathroom most of the second intermission just because he doesn't want me to do it. But so I think I have to go with that. It gets the people going.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, I guess mine would be, and I kind of had to rattle through some songs quickly at the last second. There's so many options that I haven't even had a chance to consider right now because Bridget kind of hit me with this right before we started recording. But I think the one that came to my mind right away was Stand By Me.
Okay.
You know that song?
What, by who? Say.
By Benny King. It's like the oldies. It's like, so darling,
Oh,
darling,
no,
stand.
that is a real throwback.
Yeah, it is. But like, I picture myself being in the batter's box, right? And then it's like, and then all of a sudden you hear the
I was
dun dun
picturing
dun
celebrating after a
dun dun
goal.
dun
That's a
dun 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 dun, and I'm walking up, and then everybody knows I'm going up to the plate, right?
I guess
It would
I
have to be
guess
a walk-up song. It wouldn't work for a hockey goal song. I did
no, it
ask
wouldn't.
Will if it was I did ask Will about his walk-up song if he was a baseball player.
Mhm.
Goal
I
song
feel
would have to
like
be something more,
hype,
rock
yeah.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah, Scott, I'm gonna just take a stab, would be something Springsteen.
Yeah, yeah. What? I'm gonna give Scott his. Let's do what's the song called? It's like if you like pina coladas,
Oh, yeah,
getting
what the hell's that
caught
song
in the
called?
rain.
That's a
What's
great song.
that?
It's
That's Scott's. That's Scott's.
Escape. I think it's called Escape.
If you like making love at midnight. Everybody's holding up Scott's pops things in the
That's
crowd.
everybody. This goes up on the screen,
Yeah, there you
and
go. There you go.
he's gonna
Yeah,
love
that was
listening back to this on his ride home from We Think Maine.
yeah. TBD. We'll find out soon enough.
uh, so
Yeah.
you want to go to our scheduled Thursday programming?
Yeah, listen, I'm gonna have to give Scott a piece of my mind later because he kind of got us into this pickle of these three furs or whatever. Listen, I don't know what we're doing, or all I know is that I have a question for Bridget in the audience, and we'll call it what we will afterwards. Maybe it's a two for Thursday. We each give a player, whatever. But um, essentially, like every single season, we talk, especially in the summertime, right? We talk about storylines that we anticipate happening, and how's this guy gonna do? How's that guy gonna do? How's the team gonna do? Whatever. And then every year, you look back after the season, and somebody, for the most part, a storyline emerges or a player emerges that nobody was expecting or anticipating the prior summer. So I was trying to think recently, so what could that be this year? What is something that we're not talking about this year that this time next year will be more of a known commodity and might catch us by surprise in a good way or a bad way, right? And Bridget, for me, that answer is okay. Everybody who's a young player that might not be on the opening night roster that this time next year though we'll be talking about as being a mainstay on the team. I know James Hagens is the obvious, right? I'm not talking about Hagens. I'm talking about somebody that's been in the system. And when it comes to younger players, Fabian Lysel's name is mentioned a lot. Oftentimes, you know, in a way, people are saying, I don't think Lysel's going to pan out. Matt Potras talked about more in an optimistic way. Fraser Minton is another player that they've gotten recently. But one name that comes to my mind is Dan Zlashmelis. I am very, very encouraged, and I talked about it earlier in the spring. Very encouraged by his World Championships performance for Latvia. He garnered praise from Sidney Crosby, who went up to Lashmelis after a game against Team Canada, a Team Canada that had as good of a roster as you will get in World Championships because the NHL was still going on. He obviously, in a very, very brief amount of time, lit up the AHL with Providence. He had 2 points per game. He played 6 games. He had 12 points, I believe. He had a very strong sophomore year at UMass, a more quiet freshman year, but a very strong sophomore year at UMass. Did amazing in a short time at Providence. Had a very, very respectable World Championships. I don't believe he'll be an opening night guy for the Bruins. I do think that he'll be a guy at training camp that is turning heads and makes it tough for the Bruins to make a choice on him. Ultimately, I think the Bruins might look at him and say, we want him to go down to Providence for a bit, right? Be the guy, learn the systems. For all the reasons why the AHL is appropriate for players, I think that they'll do that for him. But I do think that at some point throughout the NHL season, we will see him at the NHL level. And I do think he's going to make good of his opportunity. And I think this time next year, he'll be a player that we are penciling into their lineup. I'm not sure whose spot he's going to take or when he'll get called up or how it's going to play out. But I think he's a player that this time next year, we'll be talking about him being more of a mainstay for the team. That's my bold prediction for something that we're not talking about right now that I think next year we would be.
Yeah, maybe at this point next year we're talking about him like passing some of those guys that on the depth chart like Merkulov or Lysell or whomever. It's going to be an important season for all three of those guys. Probably starting out in Providence and trying to prove their way once again. And we know that for Merkulov and Lysell, so far they've been down there and they've really only gotten limited chances in the pros. So the competition in Providence for young guys to come up and take spots is going to be stronger this season. And they also have more competition on the roster for bottom 6 spots because of who the Bruins added in free agency. And we've kind of gone over that as well. But just add a little bit more color on Lashmelis. He had the second most assists for UMass last season. He had 24 assists. He had 31 points in 39 games for them. He takes faceoffs. He can play center or wing. But he was second in assists behind Cole O'Hara, who should have been considered a little bit more highly for the Hobie last year. He was a top 10 finalist for the Hobie, one of the best players in college hockey last year. And I think Lashmelis is really fast. He's good at, puck retrieval. He plays in front of the net. On the power play, he causes all sorts of problems up on top of the crease. So this is a guy that obviously that we're talking about at the college level, but if he can transfer any of those skills, they could be helpful. And he was, just for like perspective on how the Bruins got him, where they drafted him. He came 119th overall, which is a 4th round selection by the Bruins in 2022. So, that's not a high draft. That's not considered to be a high draft pick. But if you can get him, into your pro system, that'll go down as a really good selection there in the 4th round.
Yeah, and and I want to double check this. It's not in front of me right now, but I'm not comparing the players and I'm not putting these expectations on it. But David Krejci, I think, was a 4th-round draft pick, or maybe a 3rd-round draft pick. I think he was maybe 4th round, maybe 3rd. Maybe he was 2nd. I don't really know. I'm all over the map right now.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
everywhere.
maybe he was a 10th rounder or a 1st rounder.
I'll pull it up now.
Confirm that for me.
I will.
But he's definitely one of those players that has popped since his draft year. And I think what stands out about Lars Melis is that
Second round.
he was a 2nd
30
rounder.
So yeah, 2nd round. Back in 2004, went 63rd overall.
So yeah, so not
No, wait.
a fair comparison at all, even with the
Wait,
drafting.
wait a minute. That can't be right, because then that wouldn't be in the 2nd round. 33rd overall? I don't know. He was a 2nd round pick.
Yeah, okay, so he was a 2nd rounder. But the thing that stands out about Lars Melis is that you mentioned it, he's a very fast skater, which is a difference between somebody like Merkulov. Like Merkulov is he's not a slow skater, but his lack of size at the NHL level, he doesn't have that breakaway speed. Lars Melis does have the ability to excel at the NHL level. Like I said, that World Championships, he outraced Macklin Celebrini from Lars Melis's defensive zone to the offensive zone with the puck on his stick. Celebrini had no puck on his stick, and I mean that just says a lot about his straightaway speed with the puck on his stick. But he has a low center of gravity, and he has great body positioning. I see traits in him where it can translate to the NHL level. And so for those listening, if you are or you are not familiar with Lars Melis, keep an eye on him in training camp. And like I said, I expect him to start the year in Providence. If he does, keep an eye on him in Providence. Maybe he never makes it in the NHL, right? Nothing's a guarantee, but he, to me, looks like a player who has excelled at the pro level, even more so than college. I just think he's somebody that we'll be talking about. But Bridget, how about you?
So I'm going, we're keeping it pretty much to prospects, because those are the people who we're kind of waiting and seeing what happens with them this season and what they can do to step up. And this is someone that I think people already do have high hopes for, but I think we'll be having a different conversation about him this upcoming off season, because I don't think we've talked about him really all that much this off season. And I want to talk about Fraser Minten as maybe someone we're seeing expand, because if you think about it, he comes to Boston and people are pretty impressed by him, because he comes in, he's pretty big, he's 6'2", listed at 195 pounds. He's only 21. He comes over in the Carlo trade, and he was doing a pretty solid job as a young kid, filling in as a 3rd-line center once the Bruins traded away so many of their regular roster pieces. And players like David Pastrnak after games would come over and say, I think the best players on the ice today were Fraser Minten and Kuznetsov, like praising the younger guys that they got. And they put Minten next to Pastrnak in the locker room on purpose, so that they could chat together, they could talk together. And Fraser Minten is also someone who's considered to have, leadership upside eventually. So this is a guy that maybe he ends up playing a full season, because he hasn't played a full season in the pros yet. He's played 25 career games. 21 of those were last season, and that was split between the Bruins and Toronto. But maybe at the end of next season, we're talking about him as a legitimate, like, 82 game player. Like he's playing the whole season, and he's stepped up, and he's solidified himself a spot in your middle 6. I could see that happening for him. He's very smart, and he's got the size to compete and the strength to compete already, even though he's 21 at that level. So I think maybe we're talking about, okay, we're going to try to fill in around Fraser Minten next offseason for what do we want to put around him on the 3rd line in free agency or what have you. And you're trying to build, say, a 3rd line or something around Fraser Minten.
And Minten's in a perfect example of why last year was so necessary. Like, Charlie Coyle is a great NHL pro, right? On the ice, off the ice. He's a good guy to have in the room. He's a good guy to have in the ice, especially when he's on his game in the right role. right? He, by the way, is obviously he's moved on from Colorado already. He's now with Columbus, right? So, but in an alternate reality where the Bruins didn't sell at last year's deadline, okay, they wanted to stick with it and maybe try to, if not add a piece, just stay pat and try to just ride it out and maybe make the playoffs and bank that McAvoy comes back and Lindholm comes back, whatever, Marchand comes back, whatever. They would have missed the playoffs, and you wouldn't have had the opportunity to draft James Hagens. You wouldn't have gotten, an additional 2 or 3 second-round draft picks, an additional 2 first-round draft picks. You wouldn't have gotten a prospect like Zellers. You wouldn't have gotten a prospect like Fraser Minton. You would be entering this coming season going down a dead-end road. Another year running it back with Coyle and Zaka and Lindholm, and it's like they needed to do what they did. And I just think that, yeah, like there might be some growing pains, right? Like doing what they did last year doesn't mean there's not going to be some steps back to before making some larger strides forward. But I just think I personally am going to really enjoy watching these players develop and turn into the future of the team. And I think that Fraser Minton absolutely should. The expectation for him should be 82 games next year. To your point, Bridget, and I think this time next year, I hope that we're sitting here saying that, yeah, Fraser Minton could be their third line pivot for the next 10 years, if they want him to be with upside to do more potentially, right? But
Yeah.
it's as we saw with Coyle, as we saw with Chris Kelly during the Bruins Cup runs, like having a reliable third line center who can do both at both ends of the ice is important. And I do think that we'll see. Like he has competition too. We talked about it before. Is Matty Poitras going to be a center? Right? I mentioned Dan Zlashmelis? Is he somebody that's going to try to be a third line center one day for the Bruins or more? Like they're what happens with Casey Middlestat? If Casey Middlestat doesn't stick in the top 6, does he go down to the third line? So like there's competition, right?
Yeah.
But it's going to be fun to follow.
Yeah, and I think what he does have, what Minton does have that maybe somebody like Matt Poitras doesn't have or Don Zlashmelis doesn't have is the defensive side of his game is a little bit more developed. And he's, someone that you can trust in different defensive situations. And a lot of times third line guys have to be more that kind of a player. And hence why we kind of have conversations like, oh, is Matt Poitras better fit on the second line? It's like, well, yeah, those are players that tend to spend more time in the offensive zone. They don't have to be as defensive. And like I mentioned, he's bigger than Poitras. And he's bigger than Leishmelis. So he's got a little bit of a size advantage and a developmental advantage, I would say, in terms of just being a full 200-foot player.
Now, Bridget, I want to get your thoughts on Poitras and Fabian Lysell real quick. We're gonna kind of go off the road here a little bit, but what do you want to see from those two players to if they want a chance of making the team and sticking around? Obviously, like I said, I think people are more optimistic on Poitras, and he should be a guy that finds a roster spot come opening night. I think that Poitras, his effort is there, but despite his effort, I do think he needs to win more battles. He needs to be tougher, stronger, more physically inclined. I think we've seen him kind of he I'm not saying this to be critical or insensitive, but he seems like at times he's kind of fragile. Like he's vulnerable to getting hurt physically at the NHL level to this point where he's been a little bit undersized. Some of the bigger guys kind of take advantage of him. And I just think that he's not going to grow another 5 inches, right? So he just needs to keep getting stockier and just getting stronger. And I think that because his creativity, his hockey sense, it's all there. I see it, right? But he has to be able to endure a little bit more, because the best ability is availability. That's my thing about Poitras. And then Lysell, I think it's just all about consistency.
Yeah, I mean, we can call this the third of our three-fer
There
and
we go.
pretend this was Scott's idea. But no, I mean, you're not being overcritical at all to say that he has missed time with injury and he has been bumped off pucks and he does get targeted because I think players around the league know that he's going to give up the puck if they give him a hard enough hit, and that maybe he might be a little bit hesitant to go into some of those areas because he's worried about hurting his shoulder again or what have you. But yeah, it's a disadvantage that we've talked about this before. Like, you can't make him any taller, but you can put on weight and muscle and prepare your body with recovery and all sorts of different things. So yeah, he's going to have to be one of those guys who off the ice really works hard at keeping up with the, like, just what other guys might naturally be better at doing, like, just because they're bigger. He's gonna have to work harder. But I think he's got the right personality to try to keep up and compete. And I don't think any of our fans, our listeners, really would say they're ready to give up on Patra, and he's somebody that's like one of their favorites. We get a lot of questions about Patra, talking about, like, why isn't he getting more chances? Why? So I don't think people are down on him currently. Certainly the fan base. It's kind of harder to say what the Bruins organization might feel about him at this point because they've bounced him down and up and down and up to Providence this past season. And, you know, it could all just be for the sake of his best development path, or maybe it's that they didn't think he was good enough to be on the roster. It's probably, it's harder to say what they're feeling about him, and where they think he fits in the future. I guess put him right in that category of TBD, because I think his future is just as in question as some of the other guys we've talked about. Not Leishmelis, but like Fraser Minton and him, I feel like are both at a crossroads where they're early on in their careers, and we just don't really know what. It's up to them.
Yeah. I mean, and he's still only 21 years old, right? I mean, he's 21 years old with
Yeah.
66 games to his name. I mean, there aren't many 21-year-olds, whether they're drafted in the first, second, third, or fourth round, that or later, that have that many games at that stage of their, a lot of the 21 is when a lot of guys start to break in, that if they do break in,
Yeah.
outside of the elite prospects, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I got a question for you.
mm,
How surprised would you be if Patra did not make the team out of camp?
I would be surprised. I would be surprised by that, because I do think that this is the year. I want to just double check when his birth month is, but okay, so March. So, I mean, yeah, he'll be 21 and a half years old, and I do think that between the opportunity that is there for him with open spots, and the fact that he's, now been a pro for nearly 3 years, I do think the expectations for him change. Um but again, this is why I'm saying, like, I think, like, somebody like Dan Zlashmelis, if he comes into training camp and just completely outperforms Matt Patra, well, Matt Patra's not going to make the team just because he's played 66 games for the Bruins and Lashmelis hasn't played any. Like, I do think that there is a world where Patra starts the year in Providence.
Yeah.
I would be surprised by it, and I would be disappointed by it, because that means that he hasn't done enough to make the team a very makeable team, considering their needs, their holes, and his potential. So that's what I would say to that.
All right. So I guess if I were to ask you your predictions for, this is obviously really early, and then we'll probably do a similar activity right after training camp or during training camp. Like, if I give you a name, you tell me
Mm,
whether or not you think they're on the roster right out of camp. So Fraser Minton,
yes.
Patra,
Yes.
um, Fabian Lysell.
That's the one that it's tough to see. And that's because at a certain point it becomes a numbers game. So last year, I thought Lysell, and I was at Warrior in person for much of training camp. And there were moments that he had where I said, nice, nice shift there, Fabian, or nice drill, nice rep. But his body language didn't strike me consistently enough throughout training camp as somebody who's, knew that they had to show everything they have to make the team. And it was inconsistent at best, is what I'll say, because he had one or two good preseason games, but he just, I wanted to see more from somebody whose NHL future is potentially on the line. And so I need to see a completely different Fabian Lysell this training camp. I need to see one that will refuse to go back down to Providence. I haven't seen that yet. But at the same time, even if he does have a great camp, right? Well, your top line has Pastrnak, Geeky, and Zaka, right? And Pastrnak is that well, hold on, let's double check. Lysell's handing this. What is he again? Is he a lefty? He's a righty. Yeah, he's a righty. So Pastrnak is the right wing on the top line. Your second line, now you have Arvidsson there, right? You have Arvidsson, you have Zaka and Middlestad. So automatically there's no spot in the top six. Now you could sit there and say maybe Lysell outperforms Arvidsson and in training camp and he starts the year on the second line. I don't see that for a number of reasons. I think the Bruins aren't they're not going to be very risk adverse. I think this year, I think they're going to try to want to have some veterans that can play respectable two-way game to help get that structure and identity back. So then, okay, so how about the fourth line? Well, the fourth line is not where Fabian Lysell is going to succeed. It's not. It's not his fit. So you're looking at the third line. So the third line, you have, Matt Patra, you have Fraser Minton, you have Marat Husnudinov, you have Tanner Jeannot, you have these are all options for that line, right? I don't know who he surpasses. Like he could. It's just going to be a tough numbers game for him. So
Yeah.
if he shows any signs of inconsistency, I don't think the leash for him is very long. I think the Bruins won't be quick. I don't think they'll take too long to say, all right, Fabian, back down to Providence until you prove it again.
I got two defensemen too. So Michael Callahan, who played more at the end of the season. He got, his NHL debut. He's a PC grad, has spent the last few years in Providence, finally got to taste the NHL. And I think, to me, my answer is yes, he'll make the raw. I think he'll be maybe a good seventh defenseman or, in that conversation.
Bridget, just real quick, I'm going to comment on that real quick, but I just wanted to jump back. I knew I was forgetting somebody too. They also signed Matej Blumel, right? And they signed is it Alex Steves from Toronto? Those are two prolific AHL scorers that the Brewers are trying to give an opportunity to as well to win a spot out of training camp. Those guys would also be vying for probably third line spots if they make the team. So there's just a lot of competition for Lysell.
And Georgi Merkulov, right? Like
Merkulov too. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of competition for because we think Patra and Minton are probably making that third line, and I think Tanner Jeannot, like right now, daily faceoff here's daily faceoffs line combinations, projected line combinations: Geeky, Lindholm, Pastrnak, Zaka, Middlestat, Arvidsson, Jeannot, Minton, Matej Blumel, John Beecher, Sean Corrali, Michael Eastimont. I mean, hell, Matt Patra is not even listed there. Neither is Marat Husnudinov. Let alone Fabian Lysell. Yeah, no, it's I don't think so either. I think, but I'm just saying, like, these are some names that are out there for options, right? So, but yes, Michael Callahan, right? Yeah, I think he's definitely somebody that's going to have an opportunity to get some playing time, especially because we know the NHL is such a tough season to stay healthy for. So, I mean, the Bruins' top six is Lindholm, McAvoy, Zadorov, Jokiharju, Peak, Lohrei. Order them how you will, outside of the top two guys. But beyond them, I mean, there's going to be injuries at some point. So you have, Jordan Harris, who they signed, Victor Soderstrom, who they signed in the offseason, Michael Callahan, of course, who you mentioned. So I think those are probably your top 9 on the depth chart right now. Frederick Brunet is another player that fans like as well. And so
he's only 21.
Yeah.
Like he's on the younger end of guys. And you mentioned him before we started as maybe being someone that you're interested in his training camp and what he can prove.
I definitely am. So, I mean, I think that ultimately it's no secret this Bruins roster at the NHL level, it's missing a couple of high-end pieces, right? Certainly up front, they're missing at least one bona fide top 6 forward, at least one, maybe 2. And then on the back end, I think that it's fair to say that they're missing a legit top 4 defenseman. Now, maybe Yoki Haru or Peak play above their capabilities, maybe similar to how like Coyle and Zaka did in the 23-24 season. Maybe they produce and play like a top 4 defenseman, but I think it's not the ideal guy. So the Bruins roster is obviously missing a few key pieces. There's no doubt about it at the high end level, but they're not short on depth and competition for spots, right? Like, so that's something to keep an eye on. Like there are a lot of players that are capable of playing bottom 6 forward roles, and even bottom pair defense roles at the NHL level. I think that there's going to be good competition for. So I know that's kind of I know fans might hear that and roll their eyes and be like, "Well, we don't want depth. We want high end pieces." Like I hear that. I get it. I'm with you, but like you still need to have competition. Like that's obvious.
Well, I guess yeah. The more draft picks that you've had, like there's been a stretch where the Bruins just didn't have any guys that they had drafted to bring in, or like it's very limited now that we're talking about other prospects that they traded for and other draft picks that they have now received. It should, in theory, boost competition in Providence, but also hopefully somebody like Hagens will boost it on the NHL roster as well. So as soon as he gets in, we'll see. Like I guess at this time next year, Brian, this is what the question is. You said, "Oh, Hagens is the easy one," but like I guess the question, assuming he's on the roster, assuming BC once their season ends, he comes. So maybe call that March or April.
Mm-hmm.
Where is he playing? Whose spot does he take? Like who is he bumping?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Bridget, and that's all the more reason why when we talk about players like Patra and Minton and Lysell, like I know it's there's a lot of versatility. Like guys can play center and wing these days, right? But we're talking about these guys making a team now, right? And how challenging it will be to win a spot at training camp right now, let alone when you know that you have a future mainstay at the top of your lineup entering the team, like you said, in less than a calendar year's time. So when Hagens comes around, it's you better have if you're Patra, if you're Lysell, if you're Minton, if you're Lashmelis, whomever, like the sooner you cement your spot in this lineup, the better for you personally, because there's only going to be more turnover, like you mentioned. And the reality is, not all of these guys are going to cement their spot in this roster prior to Hagens getting here.
And throw some of the veteran guys that they just added in that category as well. Like Sean Corrali also has to work every single shift to make sure he stays in the lineup. And
Casey
Johnny
Middlestad.
Butcher. What?
Casey Middlestad. Right? Like he's right now he's kind of like a Costco sample, right? He's like a tryout. Like, all right, he's 26 years old. He's entering his prime in the NHL when it comes to age, right? Over the next few years, can he run with a spot in the top 6? Or, is Hagens going to one day surpass like Elias Lindholm and Pavel Zacha and then Casey Middlestat your second line center behind Hagens? Or is Hagens gonna force Middlestat to the third line or force him to trade, whatever? Like so when you ask like who does Hagens like kind of bump down, it's going to come down to a combination of things. Does Hagens make the NHL roster at some point later this next spring, or are the Bruins have they regained their structure and identity, and are they a respectable product, maybe battling for a wild card spot? In that case, the influx of skill and youth could be helpful. Are the Bruins an absolute shit show and an environment that you don't want Hagens to even be in next spring? Maybe. Like, we'll see. But it's going to come down to the players that are on the NHL roster to, like, take advantage of their opportunities, right? So basically, whoever's struggling, whoever struggles the most next year, that's who's in jeopardy. I don't know who that player is, right?
Yeah. It will be interesting to see how high of a level he'll be challenging at, right? Like, does he like Ryan Leonard came in and started playing on the second line last year with the Capitals?
Yeah, I think James Hagens, I think he's going to have some developing to do on the fly at the NHL level, just like anybody in his position. But I don't see him being like let's put him on the third line for his rookie year. Like his first full season, I mean, Like let's put him on a third line as rookie. No, like he's gonna be a top 6 forward right away in his first full season. And I would imagine that. Look, if you look at the Bruins top 6 right now, you got Arvidsson, you got Middlestad. Like I can very easily see Hagens, replacing one of them and pushing one of them down a lineup at some point if he were to get there. Hell, those guys might even slide down before Hagens gets there. Like maybe somebody else outperforms those guys. Like it's tough to tell, but I definitely think that Hagens will be put in a position to succeed with top 6 players pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Whenever
And
that is.
So look at that. We already have gone over 50 minutes
Yes.
on, this August summer day. It always happens. We're always like, oh, I don't really know. And then we get talking. I swear we could probably do like another 2 hours because
Oh yeah.
this is what we talk about anyway. Like people will walk up to me and then that's what they want to talk about. But there was one other thing before we go. We don't have to do our Throwback Thursday question yet because maybe we should save that for next Thursday.
Yeah.
Seeing as we've already gone this long.
Mhm.
And that might be my first episode to record from my new place. So
That's
we'll see.
right. That's
Gotta
right.
find a new place for Harold as well. But
Big couple weeks for you. You got the move, you got vacation.
yeah, and then I'm going to Jonas Brothers. So
Wow.
big next few weeks for me.
Mhm.
But yeah, what was I saying? I got lost.
There was one more question you said we had? You had?
No, I said we're gonna push off that till
Oh.
Thursday.
So that was the question you were talking about.
No, it was something else.
That's what I'm saying. You said you had another question you wanted to talk about.
No, I don't remember, Brian. Okay, you threw me off because I was like, "Oh yeah, shit, I do have a lot to do."
Well, yeah, I do think the one that I had might be a bit of a Debbie Downer to end on. So
Yeah, we
maybe
don't need to do that today.
we can say that. Maybe Scott has an answer for that too. So,
Yeah, we'll save it for Scott
unfortunately, you will remember your question the
as soon as we get
second
off.
that
Yeah.
I sign us off, and just write it down, and we'll talk about it next time. Okay.
Okay. Oh, it wasn't a question. It was a statement. I came to me.
All right. Talk to me.
So just one last prospect thing that happened this week. Roger
Yeah.
McQueen did end up going to PC officially. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something I mentioned in passing a while ago because I had heard
You were
about it.
all over
But
that. That was you probably told us that first week of July, I think.
I think, yeah, it might. I
Off the
think it
record,
was
of
before
course.
the draft. Yeah, off the record, I had told
No,
you
it
guys
was
before.
it was after the draft. It was after the
But
draft,
yeah,
but it
I
wasn't
think
far
I had
after.
told you guys
Oh,
before the
okay.
draft, like,
Okay.
not mentioned it on the podcast, but that he was somebody that they were interested in, and then I'd heard that like because he got drafted by Anaheim, like that might have changed him whether or not he was going to college. And I guess at some point recently, the decision was made that college was the best route for him. So he's
Yeah.
going to end up in Hockey East. There were a few Hockey East teams interested in him, not just Providence, but he's going to go there, and I think that changes the landscape of Hockey East. Because that's a big addition, 10th overall guy, going there, and somebody that we've heard has some of the most offensive, the highest offensive ceiling and skill set. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see him there this year, and how that changes. Like, does that make them a top 3 team in Hockey East this year? Does that make them a top 5? Like, where are they going to fall now with this prospect being, McQueen being as good as he is?
Yeah, he's a great get for them. And you mentioned the competition. I mean, I'm not sure, what it was that they were able to do to get him to go to commit to Providence over some of the other teams. I don't know who those teams were. Maybe you do,
I do.
but tell me offline, I guess. But yeah, he didn't go 10th overall because he was the 10th best prospect in the draft. A lot of it had to do with people having concerns about his health with the lower back injuries over time. But I think that it's cool to see him in Hockey East because I didn't think that James Hagens was a possibility for the Bruins. I mean, you talk about. I remember texting you guys at the during the Bean Pot, being like, would you guys trade this and that to try to get the number 1 overall pick?" And at the time, the Bruins were like 16th in the NHL, so like there was no world where they were getting him, right? And even when the Bruins did tank at the end of the year and they finished 5th last and moved down to 7th, I was like, Hagens isn't going to the Bruins. So who are some players that could go to the Bruins, right? And to me, I thought Roger McQueen had some of the highest upside of potential players to go to the Bruins, but it was just the classic, like, how seriously could these injuries affect him and stuff like that. The same concerns everybody had. So the fact that we have the opportunity to watch who I thought for months could have ended up being a Bruin potentially, we get to see him down the street in Hockey East. And another name that I'm curious about, Bridget, is have we heard anything in the hockey world on Caleb Desnoyers? Because
as far as I know, he is not planning on playing college hockey this year, but as of right now, that's the information that I have. So
just seems like going back to the queue would be, I don't know, like I feel like he's kind of done all he can do there. But anyway,
as of right now, the teams that I knew that were interested in him, he's not like really talking to right now.
So let's think about some of these top 10 prospects from last year's draft and that are in college hockey right now. So you got Porter Martone, who went 6th overall. He's going to be at Michigan State. You got James Hagens, who's going to return to BC, went 7th overall. Roger McQueen, 10th overall to Providence. Gavin McKenna, projected 1st overall to Penn State next year, projected 1st overall. I'm one of Will Zeller's teammates at North Dakota. He's rooming with them. Verhoff or something. Keaton Verhoff, is that what's his name?
Yeah.
He's also projected to be a top pick next year's draft, and he's at North Dakota. Man, just a lot of high-end talent in college hockey next year.
And
in particular, Hockey East.
I think in Hockey East, there's some really good goaltenders as well. I mean, last year there's Fowler. He's moved on. He's up in Montreal system now. But Yegorov at BU is when he came in, I was immediately impressed by him, and he's gonna be a really good NHLer. I think he's a 2nd-round pick.
And they still have Cole Eiserman and Cole Hudson.
Yep. And then we mentioned Alvin Boya in Maine, and Maine's kind of one of those teams, like, it might not have a bunch of draft picks, but it's built really solidly and coached really well. So and they won the Hockey East Championship last year. So a lot of good things to keep an eye on. And I didn't want to start with this because, like, obviously this is more of like a hockey. It was like a college hockey segment that we always end up talking about. But it should be a good season.
Bruins fans are hockey fans too, right? Like they love.
That's why when I mentioned
hockey and stuff,
when I mentioned the McQueen thing in passing, I didn't realize people were gonna like pick it up and like just like tweet it out and like I'll get excited about it because I had just literally been like, oh, I heard he's interested in coming to Hockey East, maybe PC. Never knew people were gonna just like run with it, and they gave me credit at least, but I wasn't intending on it being like a legitimate report. Just thought it was maybe interesting to some people, but it ended up being. See, I'm right sometimes, Brian.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I wish you told the world when you knew instead of being so modest about it. But
well, I have another job that I have to make sure I don't get fired from.
I know. I got you. All right. So yeah, again, college hockey East in particular, it's going to be awesome next year. If you haven't been a college hockey fan historically, like this upcoming year really is boasting the most talent that NCAA D1 has ever had across the board. So that'll be great to follow. Bridget, thank you for your time. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.